Thank you for joining us here this afternoon. As you are aware, the Hawaii State Constitution requires that I provide notification to the legislature of bills that I am considering for veto no later than the 35th day after the adjournment of this year's session. And I have placed 20 bills on the intent to veto list. I would reaffirm that does not mean that I am going to veto all 20 of the measures, that we definitely are considering them. We will be making those decisions between now and July 10th, which is the final day for vetoes. I'll be highlighting a couple of bills that is on the veto list and what our current thinking is. And then obviously we've distributed the full list of bills that are on the notice to veto, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you might have. Senate Bill 1292 relating to transit and accommodations. I did include this measure. This bill would require the hosting platforms to collect fees for booking services, to register as tax collection agents, and to collect the general excise and transit and accommodations taxes. The state's taxation of transit accommodations through the hosting platforms should complement the county's regulations of transit accommodations. As you know, the City and County of Honolulu has taken action to pass a measure to establish regulations. And certainly we want to make sure that any action taken at the state level does not interfere with the action taken in the recent passage of Bill 89. As you know, the mayor had indicated that he would be inclined to sign Bill 89. And so certainly our concern is that any action that we take be complementary of actions that would be taken at the county level. As you know, the federal Internal Revenue Service and the state tax department are obligated to collect taxes on business activity, whether they are legal or illegal, as affirmed by the U.S. Constitution, the 16th Amendment, and 100 years of court decisions. While Senate Bill 1292 may make tax collection more efficient, the recent passage of Bill 89 by the Honolulu City Council could affect certain logistics in the collection of taxes. And so certainly we want to make sure that there is no adverse unintended consequences that were not fully contemplated when the legislature took action on Senate Bill 1292. Senate Bill 301 relating to taxation of real estate investment trusts. This measure would disallow the dividends paid deductions for real estate investment trusts. This measure could discourage business continuity, the business community from investing in Hawaii. Disallowing dividends paid deductions for REITs could potentially stifle economic development and scare away investment capital to address our aging infrastructure. From the economic development perspective, REITs provide stable economic growth and long-term benefits, including job creation that will extend the supply chain into rental and commercial properties. The benefits of continuing with this federally established legislation are clear and quantifiable. REITs are an important investment vehicle for all types of investments in Hawaii. If the state corporate income tax is imposed on a REIT, there may be negative impacts to the state's economic health and business climate, such as a reduction in the general excise tax, property and state income taxes. Overall, the unintended consequences of imposing a corporate tax on REITs are not worth the potential benefits. Hawaii needs to be a place that is able to attract investment capital in order to create jobs and a sustainable economy. House Bill 290 relating to the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. This measure authorizes qualifying patients or out-of-state patients to transport medical cannabis between islands for their personal medical use. Marijuana, including medical cannabis, remains illegal under federal law. Both the airspace and certain areas of water fall within the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government. This bill may lead travelers acting in reliance on this provision to erroneously believe they are immune from federal prosecution. Additionally, there are a number of operational concerns for both the State Department of Transportation and the State Department of Public Safety. And then Senate Bill 1353 relating to industrial hemp. This measure establishes an industrial hemp licensing program requiring the Department of Agriculture to create an industrial hemp plan to be approved by the United States Department of Agriculture. The bill also makes various statutory changes, including removing from criminal regulation the cultivation, possession, or sale of either licensed or unlicensed industrial hemp. There are concerns that this bill creates a licensing structure that cannot be enforced, will not meet the USDA requirements for an improved industrial hemp program, and creates practical problems in the enforcement of existing medical cannabis laws. We do believe that there is a promising future for industrial hemp in this state. We note that without federal action, we cannot get to commercializing hemp production in the islands. And we do believe that this measure is premature as the U.S. Department of Agriculture has yet to establish their rules in what would be required for an authorized and allowed industrial hemp program in any states. We continue to work moving forward on industrial hemp. The Department of Agriculture is preparing to present a plan for industrial hemp to the Federal Department of Agriculture, which we believe would meet all of those requirements, and the vetoing of this measure would not impact our ability to expand on industrial hemp when it becomes legal. And with that, I'll stop here and take questions on any other measures that are on the list or those measures just discussed.
In placing the REIT tax veto and the vacation rental, how much money are we talking about that the state won't be getting if you do veto this?
Well, I mean, a couple of things, right? Bill 89 at the county level significantly impacts the number of vacation rentals. So that action alone would have significant impact. So we do recognize that these measures would result in a reduction of income taxes to us. I believe that it's depending on, remember the REIT bill was only allowed for 4 years of tax collections. So that impact is less than the ongoing impact. I would remind you that transit accommodations operators are already required by state law to collect and pay the transit accommodations tax. We do know that some operators and providers are currently paying the tax. So the specific revenue impact, I can give you those numbers.
Just from following,
Yeah.
I think it was like 46 million the first year for the transit accommodations and 10 million for the REIT.
Absolutely.
How do you make up that? Because like, the ledge, they passed that specific bill for vacation rentals to fund 16 other bills. So what happens to the 16 other bills? I know one of them's on here.
Well, and certainly, I think as the executive, I do have the authority to restrict appropriations, not release different measures from moving forward. I will take my responsibility of managing the state's finances. And so, yes, we may not be able to proceed with all of the appropriations made by the legislature, but we'll be monitoring and looking at what the revenue impact would be.
But are you able to find, like at your level when it comes, just for process, after
Yes.
they pass that, expecting that they'll generate this X amount of dollars to fund these bills, can you still fund those bills some other way?
Certainly, we are looking at what the impacts of these measures and these the vetoes, if these measures are vetoed, would be on the financial plan. So we are looking at what the projected revenues would be and what the appropriations amount to. And then we will be taking action to restrict as required to assure that we don't spend more than we have.
Proponents of those taxes also argue, for tax equity. They think that those entities should pay their fair share. How do you address their concerns?
I do think that there is currently tax equity. The people who receive the dividends are required to file it on their income taxes wherever they live. So I do believe that the current process does provide for tax equity.
Well, how about the other argument that these are operations that are operating in the state of Hawaii, but that income tax that those owners are paying is flying off in some other state?
There are a lot of different business entities and businesses will structure their business in a way that they get the best advantage. There's a whole industry around tax avoidance in our community. And so, having and constructing your business as a REIT or a private equity business or a publicly traded corporation has its advantages, pro and con. What we are concerned with the REIT measure is that Hawaii would join a single state that does not allow for the deduction of dividends paid to REIT investors. And we do believe, as we look forward, when you measure and anticipate what the benefit would come, we do see and recognize that they would generate some tax income. Our concern is that the unintended consequences of the signal that it sends to businesses about making investments in REITs in the state of Hawaii would be diminished. And I think most importantly that it would limit the options for existing REITs in our communities.
I have another question.
Certainly.
Can we do that later? This is for reporters right now. Any other reporter questions?
Governor, the abuse of civil asset forfeiture has gotten a lot of attention in other states. Why did
Sure.
you decide that wasn't an issue here?
Certainly, I have read a lot of stories about abuse of civil forfeiture, and I'm proud of our law enforcement in the islands that we don't see the kind of abuse that has occurred in other states. And one of the primary reasons that I put this on the veto list and I'm inclined to veto that measure is that we don't have the abuses there, that our law enforcement has been responsible in how we execute the current forfeiture law. And I do believe that this measure would have changed that system and would have taken away a vital resource for our law enforcement that allows them to, acquire different assets and equipment and other things that they would not be able to acquire under normal conditions. So I do think that our law enforcement has been responsible in how they dealt with civil forfeiture.
Governor, last week the Attorney General's office put out an opinion regarding Senate Bill 1292, saying in effect that it wouldn't preempt any county or city laws that might take effect. The city's response to that was that it does not specifically allow for your Department of Taxation to hand over the information to the counties. What are your thoughts on that?
My thought in regards to Senate Bill 1292 is this. It really, it was drafted prior to action by the council, the city council, and so it does not include explicit recognition of council action. You know, for example, I did talk with the department about, is there a way for us within the existing laws to determine whether a property being used for short-term vacation rental is appropriately zoned and regulated. Part of our thinking would be to, just like when we have bidding on state projects, we require a tax clearance. You know, our thought was, could we require a clearance from the operators that the property being intended to be rented complies with all county and zoning. And so clearly this draft doesn't include that activity. I think knowing that the city council is going to create a registration process for TVUs, that allows us to craft a proposal that specifically acknowledges that and allows us to incorporate that into our tax collection efforts. So my main concern and why I have 1292 on the veto list is that it wasn't drafted knowing that the action that has been taken with the city and county of Honolulu. And would we draft something, or can we draft a better tax collection vehicle, recognizing that Bill 89 has been passed and probably will be signed into law?
Not on your list is decriminalization of marijuana. Was that a tough call?
That was a very tough call. You know, and I did go back and forth on decriminalization of marijuana. There's many items and factors in that bill that I don't like. You know, the amount is very small. When you talk with law enforcement personnel, you know, 3 grams, you know, essentially they will proceed the way they always has, because 3 grams is a very small amount of marijuana. And there are provisions that we think should be included in a decriminalization bill that is not included in this measure. You know, trying to deal with young people who we would want to get into substance abuse or other kinds of programs to help them deal with drug use is not in this measure, and it has been in other decriminalization measures in other jurisdictions. So there are kinds of pros and cons on both sides on this issue, and I thought that it would be best not to veto that.
I think it'll be seen probably as another step toward legalization for recreational use. Do you think that's where we're headed?
Well, I mean, I know that the legislature had considered bills this year, and so certainly the Attorney General will be a lot more proactive in engaging on these issues about decriminalization, about further expansion of decriminalization, looking at recreational, which I still have a concern with, and other mechanisms to make marijuana more available.
So when you say you have a concern with recreational use, it won't pass on your watch? Is that...
Well, I mean, I don't control the legislature. Obviously, there were measures to authorize recreational this session that did not pass, and I was opposing those measures. You know, I do think that that we have a medical cannabis law. I think that we have been implementing it, and the dispensaries have been getting more established and more productive. You know, I do, when I speak at the Western Governors and National Governors Association, having the opportunity to talk to other governors, certainly I do hear the concerns and the problems that they are having with recreational use and the implementation of the laws. You know, we still have a concern that marijuana And because the banking system doesn't embrace businesses that deal with medical cannabis, that it creates a very lucrative cash business. And clearly we have a lot of concerns. That's one of the reasons why we promoted the notion of electronic transactions here in the state. We wish that more of the transactions went through the electronic form. And, you know, we continue to learn from other states about the problems that they see with recreational marijuana. And most of the governors that I talk to that have recreational laws have acknowledged significant problems with those measures. So I mean, I do think that this is one of the areas that I think that Hawaii can benefit from not being at the head of the table. That we would be smart to engage and recognize what's happening in other states, acknowledge the challenges and problems that it has raised, and allow us to look at how we would implement it here in a much better controlled fashion.
What are your concerns on the Manali Bay private-public partnership, and could your concerns shape future privatization efforts of the harbors?
I mean, I do think that we are looking at privatization of the small boat harbors. As you know, we had an administration bill that wanted to get general authorization for public-private partnerships for the small boat harbors. You know, we would have then started to have conversations in the facilities and think about what the benefits of a public-private partnership would be, so that we could move forward together. You know, this measure, our concern is that it designates Manali Bay as the pilot site. And I've heard many concerns from the community there that they did not have the benefit of being notified that that was actually under consideration. And many of the users of the harbor there are concerned about what the impact of privatization would be. And as you know, Lanai is a very small harbor, you know, and those that are there actively using the harbor are very concerned with private ownership or leasing the facility to a private operator.
Governor, the numbers I've seen show pretty high rates of underage e-cigarette and vaping use in Hawaii. Do you think that's a problem, and how did it factor into your decision on 1405?
It absolutely is a problem. You know, we had a pretty robust package targeting e-cigarettes in this community. We do believe that they should be taxed and regulated like other cigarette products, and we had strong measures we believed. The reason that the e-cig measure is on my veto list is the fact that we don't believe that it goes far enough into what we believe should happen. You know, e-cigarettes should be treated like cigarettes, and we should tax it at the same or higher levels. We don't believe that the challenge with youth use of e-cigarettes can be addressed by making the students the criminals, you know, trying to get them to pay penalties. It's really the adults and the businesses that are targeting and marketing to our youth that what the administration's proposal was really focused on.
Any other questions from reporters?
Governor, for the tax, the film credit,
Mhm.
are you in favor of lifting the cap or increasing the cap in the way they did, and you just have a technical problem with the bill?
Yes, I do. That bill presents a dilemma for me. We recognize and want to support expansion of the film industry and supported increasing the cap on the film tax credit to $50 million. You know, our concern is about the additional language that was added that directs certain actions by the university. We do believe that it's a violation of autonomy, and I'm still struggling about whether to let that measure go on. We recognize that it's important to the film industry to increase the cap. You know, we hopefully have two successful series that are being filmed in the islands, which really provides lots of economic activity. And the cap, we do believe that will be hitting up against the existing $35 million cap. So.
One quick thought, Governor, of these bills, we realize that, you don't have to veto any of them, but there are any on this list that you know for a fact you are going to veto?
I do believe that a number of them I am going to veto. I am inclined to veto Senate Bill 1292. I do believe that at this point we would be better now that the City and County of Honolulu has taken action, that we would be better informed in drafting a bill that is more specific to the action already taken by the City Council that would allow us to do a better job of collecting taxes.
You sounded similarly certain about the REIT bill.
Yes.
Going to get a veto?
Yes.
Okay.
All set?
All set.
Okay, thank you, everybody. If anyone has any other questions, we have our Attorney General and the head of our Taxation Department available for you as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Governor.